The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, I'm Silk Kozar,
Director of Ball of Confusion. Call it Ball of Confusion because the world is a ball of confusion.
I'm really happy to be working with Keith Zimmerman on this project. Imagine the first ball to be played in the 36 Olympics. Just the excitement of working with someone like Keith, who has so much knowledge and history of the game, as well as the artifacts.
And I've witnessed this beautiful game that Dr. James A. Naismith created in 1891. I've witnessed the impact that the game of basketball has had on society, the global impact, the racial relationships immensely improved because of the game of basketball. And I thank God that I was able to play it at a certain level. And I was able to meet so many of my good friends through the game of basketball.
Welcome to the first show of the month of June, Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play. To my immediate left, it's a family affair. This is my cousin Fred Mentor from Tax Methods Incorporated, or is it LLC. Welcome, cuz.
Hey, how you doing, Bob? Good to be here.
Man, let's have some fun and illuminate some of the things that are going on around the world. It's fitting that the gentleman who's going to be coming on momentarily entitled an epic film documentary, Ball of Confusion, because that's what the world is today. And the subtitle for today's show is, Are We a Democracy or Monarchy? The Hijacking of a Nation. But before we get into the elements of that, it is my pleasure to introduce to the audience today a young brother that I've known since Hush was a puppy. And we met in Knoxville, Tennessee. I was a freshman at the University of Tennessee, and he was probably in his sophomore year of high school. And he lived outside of Knoxville, and he would catch whatever mode of transportation he could to get over to the athletic facilities at the University of Tennessee. At the time, Ernie Grunfield was in school there, and the following year, Bernard King came to the University of Tennessee. I was an aspiring player myself. I tried out and made the JV team, and he was still in high school, and we used to have some epic battles till I realized that the boy could play. Silk Kozar?
Bobby.
Welcome to
Glanton-Smith.
Welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, man. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm smiling from ear to ear right now because I'm just loving your show, having your show, man, because everybody knows, that you have something to say, and you actually listen to people that actually have something to say. So, congratulations.
Well, I'm going to go back to the early days, man. Imagine a sophomore in high school with no transportation, traveling at least 40 miles every day just to, be able to compete against some of the greatest athletes in the country, because we had a great track program that was full of athletes. We had a great football program, and they had just started recruiting black basketball players. And here comes this little old cute boy from out there in the sticks, right? And I'm telling you, man, that boy could shoot a basketball, man. He couldn't play no defense. He wasn't interested in defense whatsoever. But he would go out and compete against some of the best athletes in the world at 15 years old, man. Mm-hmm. And then we didn't see each other for a number of years because he went off to college, and I moved to L.A., and then the movie School Days came out. And I'm like, no, man, that can't be Silk Kozar, But indeed it was. And then he had the persistence and tenacity to stay in the business long enough to participate in one of the most successful sports films in the history of the industry, White Men Can't Jump. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, my God. But one thing didn't change over the years as his celebrity increased, and that was his sense of humanity, his humility, and his loyalty to his friends, man. So, Silk, if you would, please, we just showed a 1-minute clip of your latest project, Ball of Confusion. Could you discuss with us the origins of that project and the significance of that project with respect to the game that has now went global in its reach and popularity, basketball?
Absolutely, but first of all, thank you for sharing the clip. You're looking at a little over 12 years of just research and loving the game and finding, as many different types of participants of the game. And the essence of the game, the metamorphosis it was meant to see and find out how basketball has helped the world. It's not just a game. I don't know which clip the audience has seen, but there's several characters, if you will, in this film that could have their own film. But I touched upon people like John McClendon, the first black coach. He had 3 championships, 3 college championships in a row, 1957, 58, 59.
Tennessee A&I.
That's right. And I guarantee you 99% of the NBA have never even heard of John McClendon. So there's one of those things. But I love finding history and making it entertaining, because that's what our youth, you got to get our attention, got to get their attention. Once you get their attention, you better have something to say. So since most of us are visual, I said, you know what? There's nothing more impactful to me besides from God, and then my mom, and then basketball, what it did for me. And I'm in a position now to share some of the things that I've learned over my lifetime and how it's helped me. And we kind of parallel the movie with what myself and my business partner, Keith Zimmerman, who actually, he and Jan Naismith, Dr. Naismith's grandson, marketed the original rules of basketball. And Mr. Booth bought those rules for $4.3 million last year and put them in KU, at Kansas University, for Naismith. So, I don't know if that answered the question, because, I could speak all day on that. It's my passion. But I really wanted to make the film to show what the global impact of this game. And people like the Globetrotters wasn't just a bunch of black clowns as people thought. And they actually stopped a war. I mean, nobody knows. People don't even know that Connie Hawkins was playing with. It was a war going on in South America, and the two entities actually stopped the war when they heard the Globetrotters were coming in to Argentina, and allowed them to land the plane, get to the stadium, play the game, finish the game. Each was on each side, no weapons. Were in the gym. Allowed them to get on the plane and go back, and started the war back up again. I mean, come on. Who knew that? I didn't know that, and so I like to share things like that is a part of history that's also part of the game of basketball.
Well, one of the people that we had a phone conversation about yesterday, and one of the, in my estimation, the greatest individual to ever play the game of basketball was Wilt Chamberlain. Describe your intimate relationship with Wilt during the span of the latter years of his life.
Oh, man. Well, Wilt was very special. I met Wilt when I first moved to California. The first week I was there, I met with a bunch of guys, and we'd find places to play, like different parks. We're ball players. The first thing you do is find out where's the best games at.
Right.
We can't get, so we tried to go into UCLA. We didn't know anybody to get in. So on our way back, we see Beverly Hills High School, and we go, let's go over there. I bet they're playing over there. So we was all locked up. So we tried to figure out how to get in the gym. And there was a track right next to the gym. And as we were walking up trying to figure out how to sneak in the gym, Wilt Chamberlain comes walking from the track area, just in shorts and a dang little towel over his shoulder, and a cute little girl with him. And one of our idiots that was on that we were like, there's about 4 or 5 of them. One of them said, "Hey, Wilt, we need one more." And Wilt Chamberlain, he came right up to us, walked right up and said, nah, young man, you're not big enough or good enough. And that was my introduction to Wilt. And fast forward 15, 20 years later, he's funding a short film project called Yo Alien for a friend of mine that wanted to direct it about how he thought people like Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, and fantastic ball players had alien genes, and he thought that'd make a funny little film. So Wilt funded it. He put a lot of money into it to be an actual, like a short film, and we were going to take it to Warner Brothers or Paramount or some studio. Anyway, so we're filming it, and Tashina Arnold was my co-star. She played my girlfriend in it. So anyway, we're at Wilt's house filming, and we're in his living room, or his bedroom was about the size of most people's living room. He had a huge bed. He had the ceiling that opened up to the sky, and he's sitting there talking. He says, this is Wilt. This is Wilt Chamberlain. He says, hey, Kozar, you think you smart, don't you? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I'm okay. And he goes, how many actual minutes are played in a pro football game? Whistle to whistle. I ain't talking about timeout. Actual playing. And I'm thinking, first of all, who thinks of that? And then, but I'm in Wilt Chamberlain's house. I'm in his presence, and it's, he's sitting over there, and his feet are way over there. He's like, takes up the whole room, and I'm saying, I just took a guess. I said, say about 68 minutes, 15 seconds. And he said, get the hell out of here. No. And then he said something like 40 minutes. He said it averages about 40 minutes. I said, that was him. He loved interesting facts, whether they made sense to anybody else or not. He didn't care. So that was my introduction to Wilt. And a week later, he's gone.
So, what role did your basketball wizardry play with you becoming a successful actor in Hollywood?
I met Ron Shelton, who wrote and directed Bull Durham, Blaze, Tin Cup, at the Hollywood Y, where everybody, Denzel, that's where I met Denzel, Arsenio. So I met everybody. Everybody that played ball was at the Hollywood Y. And me and Ron had played against each other for probably 2 years. I didn't know he was a huge director, and he damn sure didn't know I was an actor. But he always respected me as a ball player, and we'd always try to play on the same team. We ended up playing against each other in the championship league at the Y, and he played with a broken wrist. And I was like, who's this 45-year-old white guy killing people with a broken wrist? I said, yeah, it's great. And so we ended up, when I auditioned, Denzel Washington told me, he says, look, I got something for you. He says, they wanted me to do this, but this is more for you. He says, no. He said, this is for you. I'm getting ready to play Malcolm X. I said, oh, really? So I went to the set, when he and Ice-T was filming their film, and I said, Ricochet, and I played a little role in there. And Denzel came in my room, and he says, something came through the fight called White Men Can't Jump. And, of course, I laughed. I said, is that really? He goes, yeah. But he says, it's you all day long. So I ended up getting a call. I go to the audition, and Ron Shelton, who I'd been playing basketball with against for a year, is sitting across the desk smoking a cigar, and in front of 20th Century Fox, all the execs and everything. And he said, "Oh, from the gym, how you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, okay. I don't need to see this kid play. I know he can play. I'm not worried about that." So he brought Keanu Reeves in, and then Tom Cruise came in to read with me, and then Woody comes in. And then me and Woody we were cast first. And then New Jack City came out, and Fox said, Ron, take your still, put him somewhere else. Wesley Snipes going to play that role. And Ron said, well, but can he play? And so we had to have a camp to work with Woody and Wesley to get Wesley up to like basketball
proficiency,
yeah. Mm-hmm. And I worked with him personally every day and made sure he looked right because he's an athlete. He's a hell of an athlete and probably one of the greatest actors in film right now. No matter what trouble he's been in, he's one of our greatest treasures. And Wesley Snipes for sure. And him and Woody had known each other from, I think they did a movie with Goldie Hawn in the late 70s or something. So they were best friends. They were great friends anyway. it turned out to be the best, the best film I had ever made.
Now, what about the backstory to Blue Chips that starred Shaquille O'Neal before he became, the dominant force in his era, at least, anyway?
Oh, well, that's Paramount and Reebok. So that's but Ron Shelton wrote and produced that, and Billy Friedkin directed it. And what an interesting choice as a director, right? The director directed The Exorcist.
Mm.
And he directed 12 Angry Men, but he's a basketball fanatic. He loves basketball. And Sherry Lansing was his wife, who ran Paramount.
Oh, okay.
And so the next thing you know, we're in Louisiana, and Nick Nolte and I are, in the swamps. So it was and then to meet Shaq. But the best part of that, you get to play ball in between scenes. You got Rick Spock there, Bobby Hurley. You get all these great ball players there, and Shaq, you get to play with them every day. Every day.
Hmm.
I mean, I was in heaven. I was getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can do this. I like this.
Well, I want to share another interesting story before we wrap up this first of many interviews as you go through the progressions of getting Ball of Confusion into the public platform, and that is your legendary status in the NBA Entertainment League.
Man, well, you've been there.
Yeah. I was beaming with pride because you were already approaching your late 40s, and the cats that thought they could play. You made sure I didn't tell them too. But he was lighting up Jamie Foxx and all of these stars of that era. This was like 10 years ago, man. And he had some phenomenal games, man, where he just refused to miss. And to this day, I'm sure that you're still sporting that jump shot, and I'm still finger roll on him, so we might need to take that on the road one day, man.
Man, I want to be 90 years old shooting something, either a layup or a foul shot. Marcus Haynes was in his 80s, and he was still shooting around, from the Globetrotters. I mean, he was playing until he was in his 70s, so sliding on the floor like that. So
those are one of the people that he was able to get to know intimately. Marcus Haynes was probably the greatest ball handler and maybe one of the greatest shooters to ever live. And I know you had a very close relationship with him. Who are some of the other people that you feature in Ball of Confusion, Silk?
Well, we talked Michael Jordan, obviously, in the beginning, reads the original rules in the beginning of the movie, and Rick Barry talked about Naismith, and Pat Summitt couldn't leave her out. We focus on the Jewish people that everybody thought Jewish people just paid for stuff. They don't realize they were some hardcore ball players. The first basket was made by a Jewish player. And we go into, the Olympics, how Universal Studios actor Boris Karloff, who played Frankenstein and the Mummy, he funded the United States Olympic team in 1936 to play against Canada's Olympic team. Isn't that crazy?
It really is, yeah.
And Henry Ford funded the Canadian Olympic team. So neither country funded their own team. So they had to look for sponsors, and then Henry Ford ended up meeting Hitler. And we're not going into this part into the movie. This is another kind of movie, but just a couple of years after the 36 Olympics, we know what happened. Mm-hmm. And Henry Ford, taught Hitler, they say, about the assembly line kind of thing, which was crazy, but we just dwell in the positive side of things. There's so many different people.
How did you get the interview with John Wooden?
Well, you either pay for things, or you either know somebody that can give you things, or you acquire things. When you do any documentary, you either have the footage, you either own the footage. But now, I'm the director of entertainment for the Naismith International Foundation. So a lot of footage they already had.
Okay.
We didn't even have to. I mean, like I said, my business partner Keith was business partners with Jan Naismith, grandson. So a lot of footage is automatically, that they have, and but we try to tell the story from our point of view. Him being Jewish, me being black and native, and being in a white society, thrown into an all-white school at that time, in 68. During that time, what was happening in the world and what was going on in basketball at that time. That's why we have Oscar Robertson in there, which you'll love. I mean, he averaged a triple-double.
Right.
He's going crazy over triple-doubles now. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Big O?
That's who he was. That's for sure. So,
Bill Russell, the great Bill Russell. You can't talk about the game without talking about Bill Russell.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
So, Silk, I ran a little bit over because it's going to take a whole show to really, flesh out what it is that you have accomplished by attaching yourself to this particular project as we watch the game as it has evolved into a spectacle that the whole world embraces, not only just from a fan standpoint, but players from around the world are now featured in the National Basketball Association. What's your timeline for releasing this project?
In the next 45 days.
The next 45 days. So
we want to. It wants to because it's so educationally dense that we want to. It's going to go around a lot of different institutions.
Okay.
And so we're starting certain campaigns like that as in the history division. So wonderful things.
Well, promise me, man, once you finish this deal up in terms of all of the things that you got to wrap up, man, that you'll come back on the show and let us get another taste of it. And man, I'm so proud of you, man, because like I said, I watched you progress into a great humanitarian, and you have some of the kind of qualities that people should want to emulate, man, because you done rock steady and stayed true to your course, and I salute you for that, and I love you for being a friend of mine for almost 40 years now, man.
Well, it is, man. Don't tell our age, but yeah, you're right.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Out there say, well, let's see. No, he's a little old for that role.
Oh, okay.
No, I know, man. I love you, brother, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on the show, and you got it. You will definitely be the premiere, a premiere screen. Okay.
And we want to do something here in L.A. I know that you're operating out of Knoxville right now, but we'll have another discussion about doing something major here in L.A. I know they're gonna do something anyway. Whoever brings the dollars to the conclusion of this, but you'll squeeze me in there some kind of way to get something done for the community.
You already in the DNA of the project. What are you talking about? All right. Thanks, man. I love you, man.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Silk Cozart, man. Great dude. Great dude. Now we want to pivot briefly into the subject matter for today, and it's also about a confusion, and that is what has happened to America, man, in the span of less than 2 years. Things have went upside down. And one of the issues I want to deal with from somebody who's been practicing taxes for over 40 years, man, how did we end up with such a situation where so much money, more money was transferred through this so-called tax cut than anything in my lifetime, man? So if you can give us the broad strokes of how that happened, and then we'll get back into it on the other side of the break here in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, Bobby, as you mentioned, I've been doing it for a long time. And
you're getting like Silk now. You don't want to admit you've
been... I've been doing taxes for a long time.
Yeah.
I've been doing the high ones and the low ones, and I've had to study because there's always this whole school of thought that taxes aren't even illegal process.
Right.
Okay. So going through the history of the tax code and the taxes period, it's been an evolution. It looks like it just happened last year. It's been happening for quite a while. My take is that the powers that control the money are consolidating. Every so many years, they're consolidating. So they have to consolidate the tax code in order to finance what they're trying to do. We are getting into a situation where the poor actually are getting poorer. It was done prior to now. It was done through inflation. Just make it more expensive. So if I want to buy a Rolls Royce, and I didn't have the money, I only had so much. I had enough to buy a Rolls Royce now. 2 years from now, they raised the price. They doubled the price. So we're in a situation with the taxes. That's what they've done. They raised the price.
Well, how does that break down in terms of the way they sold it to us? Because they've always claimed that if you give the rich more, it'll trickle down. Mm-hmm. But in this instance, there were two things that happened that people still haven't been able to, I think, get their mind around. And that is the tax cut for the rich is permanent, and the tax cut for everybody else is situational. So explain the implications of that, if you will.
Well, the first place, they've been talking about trickle down for many years, but they didn't say how far down it trickles. Mm-hmm. It trickles down to the other ones that are on the top. They're expanding their power. None of it trickles down below a certain level where the average person could benefit from it. And the way this law was put through this last time, it was routed through. No one really knew what they were doing. And they based it on political alignment. So the way it got through was we control the House, we control the Senate, we control the
White House.
So we're all Republican. We can do whatever we want. They didn't even have one Democrat in on it, or even in the room on it. So whatever they put in this code, they pushed through. Basically, it was illegal. We're dealing with it almost like a demagoguery now. Dictatorship, almost. Anytime the leader of a democratic society can align his power where they do not want to appear to be against him because he's supposed to represent the principles that they represent, they have to back him. And the ones that don't say anything, that don't really like, they just don't say anything.
So how long before we really feel the effect, either positively or negatively, of the tax cuts?
I don't really know.
But if you don't, then nobody does.
No, I don't know. Nobody knows. I surmise that it won't be long. For the one fact is, there's no real benefit to the average working person, even now. They have commercials on TV about, my check is a little bit bigger now. I think the economy is doing better now.
Think is the operative word there.
Right.
Because all you got to do is go to any of these fast food joints, and you'll see that they have raised their prices proportionate to the tax cut. So everything that people thought that they was going to be able to purchase, there's still gasoline, for example, has gone up.
Right.
So it's a wash for the poor people. We're going to take a very short pause and pick back up on this conversation. And on the other end of this conversation, when we come back, will be a man that I've known for about 25 years. He's a prolific writer, a native New Yorker who intimately knows Cadet Bone Spurs, also known as Fake Patriot, and he masquerades as President of the United States. So we'll be back in about 60 seconds with Mr. David Fisher.
All right.
Oh, yeah, we black and back. The gentleman who is going to be joining us very momentarily, we've got a unique history together. About 20 years ago, I started writing a book called Everybody Plays the Fool with the late Cuba Gooding Sr. Mm-hmm. And we were progressing along in the project, and his son had just won an Academy Award, and you know, we were excited and inflated about the possibilities of, you know, doing something really big, including attaching a movie project to it, because Cuba Jr. was hot as fish grease. Mm-hmm. And then we started dealing with the big boys. Mm-hmm. And they said, Cuba, this is a great concept. Who the hell is Bobby Glanton-Smith? And the next time I saw Cuba, he said, Bobby, we got a situation, man. I'll make sure you get taken care of on this project, but we got to go with an established author. And he introduced me via the phone to David Fincher, and David told me, he said, Bobby, I've been in your shoes at an earlier juncture in my career. And we had a couple other conversations. He called me one day and he said, Bobby, now that I've gotten to know you, man, I've done well enough that I really don't have to do this. It's an exciting project, but if you would like me to back out of it, I said, no, it ain't gonna be necessary, man, because this is the way the business goes. Mm-hmm. That was over 20 years ago, and it's my pleasure now to introduce him to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, because we've been able to maintain a rapport over these many years. And the reason I asked him to come on to the show today is he knew Donald Trump when he was really just on his way to this place that he's at now. And he wrote a book with somebody I had great admiration for, and it was a bestseller. He's written probably 20 bestsellers in his prolific writing career. He wrote the last autobiography of Johnny Cochran, just to show the diversity of his work as a literary giant. So, David Fincher, welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Well, thank you for having me on, and thank you for those words. That's very kind.
No, not really. I don't do kind.
Whatever they are, I'll take them.
And before we get started, I'd like for you to illuminate on your most recent project as it segues into the conversation we're having. Are we in a democracy or monarchy? The hijacking of a nation.
Well, today is a good day for me. Today is publication date of my new book that I did with Dan Abrams, who is ABC's legal analyst, and it's called Lincoln's Last Trial. And a lot of people don't know this, but Lincoln was the defense attorney in 27 murder trials, the last one coming in 1859, less than a year before he was elected president. And what makes this trial unique in that more than 1,000 trials in his career, this is the only one for which a transcript exists. And we used the transcript to create a real courtroom drama. It's a self-defense case, and we talk about the legal system in great and colorful detail. And today is pub day. So, and I am hard at work on the second book in that series, which is the story of a 1915 trial in which Teddy Roosevelt, the former president at that point, was sued for calling a politician corrupt. And you read the transcript, and it could have been this week. It's exactly the same. So, thank you for having me on today, and thank you for listening to me plug my new book.
Well, it's salient, and I think in many ways relative to why I asked you to come on the show, because David and I go back and forth on Facebook sometime. He's a Syracuse grad, and our kinship not only deals with the situation we had with Cuba Gooding, but his relationship with Jim Brown over the years, because both of them are Syracuse grads and they've known each other intimately for many, many years. And David and I sometimes get into some spirited debates about politics. But one thing that he has a great grasp of is the evolution of Cadet Bone Spurs, also known as a fake patriot and a traitor to some of us. And if you would, please share with us some of the things that you've seen him do that now have got all of us on pins and needles, if you would, David.
Well, I'm going to tell you two stories that pretty much nobody knows. I can guarantee you these have never been published before. Another Syracuse grad. When I was at Syracuse, I was the student athletic information director. And I was the assistant to a wonderful man named Val Pinchbeck, who became a vice president of the NFL. Moved out after he went out to Denver with Floyd Little, and eventually came back and went to the NFL. And Val was kind of the jack of all trades of the NFL. And he was in the room with Pete Rozelle and Donald Trump when Donald Trump's league had sued the NFL. And they were talking about it, and Donald Trump made an offer, according to Val Pinchbeck, that he would sell out the rest of the league if it were guaranteed that he would get an NFL franchise. And Val was always astonished by that story. To me, it always showed his integrity.
Or the lack thereof.
And lack of. Well, I mean, that's the level of integrity he has.
Okay.
Which is, and now I'm going to tell you another story. And, you know, a lot of people in New York have had experiences with him. And any New Yorkers won't do business with him because they know they won't get paid. And, in fact, most American banks won't do business with him at this point for the same reason.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And a friend of mine worked for, at that point, the largest and most successful real estate advertising firm in the New York business area.
Mm.
And this is the firm that handled all of Donald Trump's real estate advertising. And they couldn't get paid. He wouldn't pay them. So finally they said, look, we're just not interested in working for you anymore. And he was outraged by that. Why wouldn't they work for him, even if he wasn't paying them? And so what happened is they made a deal, is he would put up money at the beginning of the month, and they would work off that money. Whatever he put up at the front of the month, that's what they would spend that month. And that way they knew they were going to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
My friend was the liaison from that firm to Trump, and he would meet with him on a regular basis. And when this happened, Trump called him and said, I'd like to see you. And he went up to his office, and Trump said to him, what's your commission on this? And he told him it wasn't much. And Trump said, I want 1% of it. And we're talking literally about hundreds of dollars. We're not talking about thousands. The percent that he was asking for was hundreds of dollars, but it was winning. It was about winning. And my friend said, screw you, and got up and walked out and never heard another word from him about it. And, you know, and that's the way the business proceeded. Now, I actually have my own experience with Trump, and I'm not sure you even know about it because I didn't tell anybody or very many people about this. But when Donald Trump decided to run for president, he decided he wanted to do or needed to do a campaign book. And they called, and it had to be done in a couple of months. And they called, and they asked me to write the book. And at that point, we New Yorkers who knew Trump and generally considered him a buffoon and someone who had not the slightest chance of winning. So I said, okay, and it paid very well. And so I literally wrote his campaign book and spent not a lot of time with him, but I did spend time with him. And went on a campaign trip. And I can tell you from experience and from firsthand knowledge, he's, number one, not very bright. Number two, not very knowledgeable, very uninformed about very common things. And number three, has not the slightest curiosity. Never asks a question about something he doesn't know. He has lived his whole life in a bubble. And because of whatever his money is, people come into that bubble. And he never leaves the bubble. And he is truly uninformed. There's a joke today about at this silly rally he had. And if you look at the video of him trying to mouth the words to "God Bless America,"
yeah,
and the headline is he forgot the word.
He never knew him.
Well, he never knew him. I guarantee you, he never knew those words. It wasn't a matter of forgetting. He knew "God Bless America." That's all he knew. The fact that he is president is disastrous. And I, as a staunch liberal, I keep saying there are many more of us than there are of them, but we don't vote. And hopefully what he's going to do is he's going to force us all to vote. I mean, you look at the numbers, there's just no reason in the world we shouldn't be winning. I mean, Florida, for example, there are, at this moment, 250,000 Puerto Ricans who were displaced in Maria. Every one of those people is eligible to vote, and they ought to all be registered and voting against every Republican. All right, so I'm getting a little carried away.
Not really, not really.
But you hear what I'm saying.
Let me ask you a question about a quote I extrapolated from an article by David Korn in Mother Jones. He said, "At the heart of the Russian scandal is the most fundamental issue for a democracy, the sanctity of elections." What would be your interpretation of that as we look at, can we afford to wait until the 2018 midterm elections without doing something to slow his roll?
Well, I think what's happened in the last couple of weeks, no matter what you're reading, is I think there's a sense of panic is sort of setting in among Republican legislators, because they are beginning, this thing with tariffs. It has really frightened a lot of them, because these are his people. These are the farmers in Iowa who are losing the soybean accounts from
with
Mexico
and China.
Yeah. These are his people, and these are the congressmen who have seen now the price of gasoline at a 4-year high. So the answer is, I don't know that we have much option, but I think if they turn on him, which I believe is starting to happen, then we're in a lot better shape.
Now, one of the things that you and I have struggled with conversationally is the Democratic Party, and in my estimation, their fecklessness. They botched the whole the election process, and here in California today, for example, they had looked like 30 people running for legislative positions, where I don't know how the outcome is going to come today. They had a chance to get 7 seats, and they might not get any of them. How do we right the ship that is called the Democratic Party in the United States?
Well, it seems to me that we have to, when you and I argue, which is always interesting to me. Well, no, it is, Bobby, because you are able to articulate a point of view that, well, it may not be my point of view. It is a rational, reasonable, and acceptable point of view. And you and I want to get to exactly the same place. We just see a different way of getting there. And, you know, where I fall back on is, you know, I'll take the okay as opposed to the perfect. I mean, I was not, well, I listened to Bernie Sanders' words. If you looked at his record, it did not in any way reflect what he was saying. That's number one. But more importantly, winning was the most important thing. And at some point, and I saw this, you know, I mean, I was alive and active in 1968, and I saw what happened when the Democratic Party was so fractured that we got Richard Nixon. And that I've seen that happen several times. And so our goal ought to be winning. And it ought to be sometimes holding our nose and voting for candidates we may not like, but we know they're better than the other guy.
I get that part of it, but the last time I held my nose, I almost choked to death. and that's what we've always had to try to iron out at the end of the day, and that is how do we get around that divide that we have internally, we meaning people of my consciousness, because there were so many things that happened during the Clinton and Obama years that were inconsistent with the forward progress of people who look like me. Now, with that being said, as we begin to wrap up this segment, and I sure want you back on my show as things unfold, and are you going to be coming out here to do any press stuff for your book project? I'm
not. I think Dan Abrams, I'll say it again, Lincoln's Last Trial. It's a terrific book. I'm not going to be coming out as far as I know. I may be out in the fall, but certainly not over the summer. Well, I'm going to send you my email address and send me a signed copy of it, man. You betcha. Yeah. Well, I need more than your email address. I need your physical address. Oh, that's what you need. That's, yeah. I get the errors confused, Dave. I get the errors confused. I just want to say, well, you know what I always found interesting, in our arguments, particularly when President Obama was in office, is it seemed to me at times I was a much bigger fan of his than you were. It wasn't no question about it, and I'm sitting here with my cousin Fred Mentor, who we share heritage with Willie Stevenson Glanton and Luther Glanton Jr., and that was one of my problems. My aunt, Willie Stevenson Glanton, was very instrumental in Obama getting elected. And matter of fact, I'm going to ask you for some technical support. I'm working on a book project in collaboration with my cousin here entitled Here Comes the Judge, all right, about my uncle's illustrious career. And he was the first black judge in the state of Iowa. He was a lawyer at the Nuremberg trials. And my aunt was the first black legislator in the state of Iowa. She just passed away last July. My uncle's been dead over 20 years. But the reason I brought that up was he never fully acknowledged her impact on him becoming president, because the first primary was Iowa that he had to win. And she visited, Michelle visited 3 times, and Obama came once. And my auntie was so influential, even white folks told the Obama people that they needed her support in order to win Iowa. And the reason that became important is not only that he didn't properly acknowledge her while she was alive, he didn't even send a telegram to her funeral. And there were so many occasions where I felt that Obama could have done some subtle things that he should have done. Just like Cadet Bone Spurs just pardoned Jack Johnson. And John McCain even wanted that to happen when Obama was in office. And then some stuff just came out today that, it's just so many times he took that Jackie Robinson approach. And it's like, come on, man. It just got to be a little much for me. The optics of it made me sick in my stomach, man, when Jan Brewer
met him at the tarmac out there in Arizona and stuck a finger in his face. Man, he should have sicked the Secret Service on him and drug her down the tarmac.
Well, let me just say there are a lot of that I can't disagree with. There are things that I wish he had been more forceful about, but my feeling always was that he understood, as America's first black president, that he was treading a line, and he may have been much too conservative on that line. And, I don't think you're wrong, but again, I was willing to settle for half a loaf.
Well, and that's why we still, I think, exercise the ability to be civilized in our disagreements. And at the end of the day, man, I value your friendship and your perspective, because you're one of the first people of prominence that came out and called him Cadet Bone Spurs a traitor, and routinely do it.
As somebody said, when we're telling the Canadians we are not going to import their steel, but buying more Russian steel, there's something very wrong. And I don't know if you saw the news today, but Putin said today that he talks to Trump regularly.
He's playing him like a fiddle, man. And
he said he talks to him regularly. Who's lying? Is he lying or is Trump lying? Right.
Well,
one of them is not telling the truth.
And I would go with the Orange Man, okay? And I ain't talking about Syracuse either. Oh, man, I have got to have you back on, David, because, again, man, we've known each other for 20 years. Although we've never met physically, we have been on the phone for over 20 years,
and
man.
We have all those mutual friends.
Yeah, man. But I want to indeed thank you for brightening the show today with some light that I find inspiring, because we do have to close the racial gap, and it can't be in a condescending kind of way, because some things we're going to disagree about. But at the end of the day, it's going to take, I think, a confluence of people who have enough in common, like we do, to try to stop this train before it derails in a way that it won't never get back on the tracks, man.
Well,
so
the last thing I'm going to say about that, because I know we're running out of time, is one of the great losses we've had in this country was your friend and my friend Johnny Cochran.
Man, and that was a great book that you wrote, man.
Well,
and
thank you.
It says a lot about you that you were chosen to do that project.
Well, I actually wrote Johnny's eulogy also.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Dale asked me to write his eulogy.
Wow.
I love Johnny. And what Johnny would have become is the leader that the black community doesn't have at this moment.
I can't argue with that. I'm glad that you said that, man, because, wow.
Because we, as Americans and as Democrats, we need somebody to speak for the black community and say, if you want our support, here's what we need.
Exactly.
Here's what we want.
Exactly.
And there's really nobody who's saying that.
Nobody, man.
And so, when I hear, as a white person, when I hear the black community saying, what do we get out of it, my answer would be, tell me what you want. Tell me what we need to do, and let's get it done. And Johnny could have been that person. And I look and I keep waiting for somebody to emerge.
Well, let me give you two names and Google both of them. David Banner and Wendell Stimley. David Banner is a brother who has went full cycle in terms of his advocacy and his maturity. And Wendell Stimley is the president of the National Association of Minority Contractors and one of the biggest minds in the country. Matter of fact, they're holding the National Association of Minority Contractors convention next week in Dallas, and this brother's so shrewd. He done got Facebook off the dime, and I ain't talking about that, chicken dinner mess, but in a meaningful way.
This is, hopefully he'll step up.
Oh, he has stepped up. Believe me, he has. But, David, I really want to thank you, and I want to have you back on my show.
Always, I love talking to you, and I love talking.
Yeah, you do, man. All right, man. I'm going to have you back on the show,
everything.
man. Thank you for coming on, David. David Fisher, ladies and gentlemen.
Send me your address.
I sure will. Okay. All right. As we wrap up the show tonight, this is not going to be the last time Cuz come in. I want to give a shout out to his brother Dexter Menon. They run tax methods services here in the Crenshaw district of Los Angeles on King Boulevard. What's the number over there, brother?
It's 2103 West King Boulevard.
2103. And what's the phone number in case somebody got
323-291-2566.
Yes, he's working on some tax issues for several of my friends. And when I get out of the witness protection program, he's going to help me get my affairs in order. But
if that ever happens.
But you know what's so fascinating? I passed by my cousin's business location for over 20 years. And just very briefly, because we only have a couple of minutes left, not knowing that we were related. And then one day on Facebook, he reached out to me. No, Dexter did. His brother reached out and said, hey, I think we're cousins. I said, I ain't related to no Menors that I know of. But what happened was they had actually, well, the root of the story is the Glantons came out of Georgia. And a section of them went to Tennessee. The other section went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And there was two Luther Glantons. One was his grandfather, and one was my grandfather. And we are, for the life of us, trying to put that tree back together to the extent that we fully understand how that happened. And it's going to be a part of the book I'm working on right now called Here Comes the Judge. But that was a couple of years ago, but let's fast forward to now. That's been one of the bright lights of the last couple of years is finding family, and it's almost like we knew each other the whole way, and there's been a commonality that I'm very happy about, and him and Fred and my cousin Esther and cousin Roddy and Cheryl. We done become family in a short period of time, and it's something that will be reflected in the work that I do about our family lineage, you know. Right. So I want to thank you, man, for the support that you gave me and the encouragement to, you know, just keep on grinding away at this, man. It's been an honor to finally introduce you to my people here at Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, man.
Well, I think you're doing a great job, whether you're my cousin or not. Witness protection program aside, I think you've been doing a great job. I've been following you ever since we met. Mm-hmm. I've been following your show. I like your subject matter. I like the people that you interview. I think they're full of substance. Mm. And these are a lot of side stories that the average American, I started to say black, but the average American hasn't heard some of these stories. Mm. And they're very interesting because they help. In our minds, they help us to put together where we really are at this time in this country.
Man, I appreciate you. And the reason I'm able to do this on a weekly basis is the lady sitting behind the board who bears with me in some of my,
right.
my ways, you know, and I got, I got ways. So shout out to OG Portis, man. And as we conclude the show tonight, I really think without overkill, want people to take a closer look at what it is that they can do on an individual basis, because there's got to be something we can all do to come out of this fog that we're in. As we are, it's almost like we're in a collective denial as to what is happening, and like it can't happen again. All right, and there's so many similarities to what's happening in America right now and what happened in Germany in the 30s. So much so that you have a reason to be concerned and motivated to do what you can on an individual level. And there's so many things that you can do. Like ask questions at the local level, how these things affect your daily life. And also think about your children and your grandchildren. I'm getting ready to be a grandfather for the first time in the next couple of weeks. And all my waking days are, what kind of world am I leaving my granddaughter? And it's like, damn, man, we got to do better. So as we close tonight, I'd like to once again thank you for letting me be myself again, and we will see you next week.
All right.